Hey YouTube, Kiratwig here, bringing you all my Ryu-Ge Yugioh deck profile. This is one of the 3 decks from the Crossover Breakers booster pack. One of the more budget-friendly decks, with it only having 1 ultra rare in the entire set. The deck focuses on being able to use our main deck, level 10 boss monsters, being 3 different monsters to summon out our ritual boss monsters, Sosi, Ryu-Ge, Mistva, to then have its boss play destruction power, which is what the deck is meant to do. Just have destruction setup going up against your opponent. So, very happy with the results of the deck. Going for more of a pure build, there are some other variants where you can mix in cards that focus on the typing for the main deck monsters, but for this version, we'll stick to the pure build. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. We'll go ahead and start off with the boss monster of the deck. We're running 3 copies of Sosei Ryu-Ge Mistva. With this card during your main phase, with its pendulum scale ability, you can, during your main phase, add 1 non-pendulum Ryu-Ge card from your deck to your hand, then destroy this card. You can only use this effect of Sosei Ryu-Ge Mistva once per turn, and it must be special summoned by its own effect. You can only special summon this card once per turn. If a monster on the field is destroyed by battle card effect while this card's in your extra deck, you contribute 1 level 10 Ryu-Ge monster. If you do special summon this card and it's treated as a ritual summon, then you can apply this effect. Destroy up to 2 cards you control. If you do, place up to that many Ryu-Ge continuous spells from your deck face up on your field. So the Ryu-Ge continuous spells are all basically worked with the field spell setup to then get these face-up field spells being the different realms that the bigger boss monsters of the deck reside in. So then you use this card for the use of when a monster on the field is destroyed. It doesn't have to be your monster either. It can be one of your opponent's monsters being destroyed, and then because of that, you can then have this card be summoned out by tributing your level 10 Ryu-Ge monster. For the bigger boss monsters, to then rely on this card to destroy cards you control to set up those continuous spells. For the bigger boss monsters, we're running 2 copies of Genro Ryu-Ge Hakuva. You can banish this card from your hand, add 1 Ryu-Ge Realm Whirlwinds from your deck to your hand. If a monster is banished face up, this card is already banished, and are now at least 2 other banished monsters that were not Genro Ryu-Ge Hakuya, except during the damage step. You can special summon this banished card. You can place 1 Ryu-Ge Realm Windworms you control on the bottom of the deck to add 1 Ryu-Ge card from your deck or graveyard or banishment to your hand, except for Genro Ryu-Ge Hakuya. You can use this effect once per turn. So it may sound a little complicated. It's more or less just a setup, using that continuous spell on the field as a put-back option to then be able to give you another resource for your deck to use, depending on the Ryu-Ge monster or card that you want to add from your deck to your hand. We're also running 2 copies of Kyoro Ryu-Ge Kaiva. You can shuffle this card from your hand into the deck to add 1 Ryu-Ge Realm card, Dino Domains, from your deck to your hand. And during your main phase with this card, if 2 or more cards were destroyed this turn, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand, and you can place 1 Ryu-Ge Realm Dino Domains you control on the bottom of the deck. Then target other cards on the field up to the number of different monster types on the field and destroy them. So with your Hakuva having the banish option, your Kaiva has a shuffle back option for the cards on the field. So 1 focusing on the banish, 1 shuffling back into the main deck, and then giving you more or less the Dino Domains control, and then the shuffle back power to target cards on the field for destruction. So you have search power with Hakuva and destruction power with Kaiva, with the last of the boss monsters being Kairo Ryu-Ge Emva. You can discard this card, so your Emva focuses on the graveyard, to add 1 Ryu-Ge Realm C sprites from your deck to your hand. And during your main phase, if 2 or more monsters were sent from the hand and or deck to the graveyard this turn, except for Kairo Ryu-Ge Emva, you can special summon this card from your graveyard, giving you the option then to place 1 C sprites you control on the bottom of the deck to banish your opponent's entire hand. If you do, they draw the same number of cards. Just getting rid of those resources again, and then having them draw over again using this card. Now, since our main go-to deck boss monster is a ritual monster, we're also running 3 copies of Diviner of the Herald, just so we have an option to send Herald of the Arclight to the graveyard, and then giving us another search for our ritual monster, which we can then use in the pendulum scale destruction option to search out one of the boss monsters we mentioned before also. We're also running one copy of Arch Nemesis Protos. This card's at 1, so we can only run the one. It cannot be normal summon or set. It must be special summon from your hand by banishing 3 monsters with different attributes from your graveyard and or phase up in the field. Cannot be destroyed by card effects. You can declare 1 monster attribute on the field. Destroy all monsters on the field with that attribute until the end of next turn. Neither player can special summon monsters of that attribute also. So depending on the card you use, you can restrict your opponent, but also having the 3 monsters with different attributes can be easily done since we have Hakva, which is a worm, Kaiva, which is a dinosaur, and then Emva, which is a sea serpent, using them for the banish to summon out this other boss monster. We also run 3 copies of Planet Pathfinder just for the tribute of this card to add a field spell from your deck to your hand. You don't really have to rely on your normal summon much in this deck, but having a way to search out our Ryu-Ge Warzone field spell, all the easier for some of our additional plays when we get to the spells, with the last of the monsters just being a hand trap lineup, the 3 Ash Blossom, and then the 2 Nibiru, and the 2 Droll and Lockbird. Tribute options, but also with Droll and Lockbird being able to use it with Emva for a potential banish, and then no way for our opponents to draw additional cards also after that. We also have now, moving on to the spells, 3 copies of the field spell, Ryu-Ge Warzone. When this card's activated, take 1 dinosaur, 1 sea serpent, and 1 worm monster from your deck. Add 1 to your hand, banish 1, and send 1 to the graveyard. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of this turn, except for dragon, dinosaur, sea serpent, and or worm monsters. If you have a Sosei Ryu-Ge Mistiva in your extra deck face up, you can special summon 3 Ryu-Ge monsters with different types, 1 each from your deck, graveyard, and banishment. You can use each effect of Ryu-Ge Warzone once per turn. The field spell is super important because you place all 3 of the monsters where you want them to be initially, with your Kaiva being placed into your hand, Hakva being banished, and then your Emva being placed into the graveyard. Having those special summon options available to you, then to place all 3 monsters back onto the field by just using their own card effects for your use of your Misva in the extra deck. We also run the 3 copies of the quick play spell, Ryu-Ge Rising. You can add 1 Ryu-Ge monster from your deck to your hand. Then you can add 1 Ryu-Ge Pendulum monster from your hand to your face-up extra deck. During your main phase, if you control a Ryu-Ge Pendulum monster card, you can banish this card and 1 Ryu-Ge monster within your graveyard. Special summon 1 Ryu-Ge monster with the same original type as that banished monster from your deck. So giving you more of those resources just to cycle through, but also just having this card set up your Misva in the extra deck all the faster for you then to be able to grab another useful Ryu-Ge monster from your deck to your hand. We also have the one-ofs for the Dino Domains, the Sea Spires, and then the Wormwinds. You only need 1 of these cards. They can be recycled back into the deck with the main deck monster card effects. With each one, with Wormwinds, you can only control 1 as well, and that effect applies to all of the Ryu-Ge Realm continuous spells. With this card during your opponent's turn, if banished instead with this play, any monster sent from the field to the graveyard, and also Ryu-Ge Pendulum monsters in level 10 or higher monsters with the original type Worm gain the effect of once per turn. Opponent's turn, quick effect, you can place 1 Ryu-Ge continuous spell from you control on the bottom of the deck. Target face a monster on your opponent's field, and its attack becomes 0. Then with the additional play of your monsters with Sea Serpent gain the effect for the Sea Spires once per opponent's turn. Quick effect, you can place 1 Ryu-Ge continuous spell. You control the bottom of the deck. Target 1 card on the field, return to the hand. And then Dino Domains being able to basically use this card to place on the bottom of the deck. And then when a monster on the effect on the field with less attack than this card is activated, gains the effect to negate the activation. And all applying to those monster effects on the field by putting back these continuous spells, which then you could just set up on the field over again with one of your other cards. Since destruction is also a big part of making use for your main go-to boss monster in the deck, which is Mistiva, we have the 2 copies of Ryu-Ge, the 2 copies of Lightning Storm, and then the 1 copy of Dark Hole. All destruction capabilities in the deck that can most of the time destroy your opponent's monsters and then make use of your Mistiva monster in the extra deck when if a monster on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, to tribute a Ryu-Ge monster and special summon that card. So then you'll have the option with Mistiva to be able to summon back onto the field thanks to the destruction of your opponent's monsters. And then lastly for these spells, 1 copy of Call by the Grave, 1 Triple Tactics talent, and then the 1 Terraforming to search out the Warzone, being one of the more important spell cards to do so. For the extra deck, for them, since we have level 10 monsters being the main focus, we run a wide variety of rank 10 monsters, 1 copy of Varudras, the final bringer of the end times, having more destruction capabilities thanks to this card, 2 Gustav Max for burn damage, the 2 copies of number 81 for protection option for card effects of cards on the field as well, the 1 Sky Palace Gongra die for the last of another destruction option to target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it, once again continuing for the destruction by card effect option, the 1 Zeus and the 1 Sky Crisis for the rest of the Xyz monsters, and then for the Link monsters, 1 Almirage, 1 Dynamondo, 1 SP Little Knight, and the 1 Nightmare Unicorn, with the rest of the extract being 2 Arclight, and then the 1 Elder Entity for send options off of our Diviner of the Herald. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, as I said, the field spell is very important for what your setup can be. When it's activated, you take 1 Dinosaur, Sea Serpent, and Worm monster from your deck and add 1 to your hand. So you'll place your Kaiva into your hand and then banish 1 and send 1 to the graveyard. So then you can send Enva to the graveyard. And then also for your Hakva being banished with this card for that setup. And if you have Ryu Misva in your extra deck, you can special summon 3 monsters with different types, 1 each from your deck, graveyard, and banishment. You can only use each effect of Warzone once a return. So with this card, you take the different monsters that we have in the deck as well, which you can search out the field spell as well, thanks to your non-pendulum option being able to add a non-pendulum Ryu-Ge card. So you can add the field spell and then destroy this card, setting it up already in the extra deck, and that additional send for that monster for this card being able to use if you have Misva in your extra deck, special summoning all 3 of the monsters with different types, 1 each from your deck, graveyard, and banishment. So you can keep the 1 in your hand additionally, and then just grab the last copy of it on the field, and from there you have your 3 boss monster setup for these cards when they are summoned out onto the field, for this card being able to use as that additional resource for you to then overlay or have other extra deck options with these 3 boss monsters you got out from just the 1 summon. And if you are able to destroy your opponent's monsters, you have the tribute ready to then get your Misva on the field as well, and then being able to destroy the additional 2 cards you control, and then place that many Ryu-Ge continuous spells from your deck face up, setting up the domains for the different Ryu-Ge monsters also. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Hopefully we'll be finishing the Malice deck soon. It was one of the decks that I pulled the least for the amount of ultras from it, so just have to get more before I can actually deck profile that one as well. But look forward to it, and as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.